All right. If you've ever listened to the Japanese rock band The Birthday and just felt that raw power coming from the guitar, then you've heard the incredible work of Kenji Fujii. But what you're hearing isn't just loud, you know? It's a sound that's been built piece by piece with incredible care. Today, we're going to deconstruct how he builds one of the most killer tones in modern rock, and you'll see it all comes down to one single powerful idea.
So let's start right here, because this quote, this is everything. Fujii's whole approach kicks off with this chase for a specific feeling, a sound he calls dozu. Now, that's a Japanese word, but you can basically think of it as guts or heft. It's that sound that hits you right in the chest. And as we're about to see, this one little idea shapes every single choice he makes. So to really get inside his head, we're going to follow his process from start to finish. We'll start with the blueprint, what is this sound? Then we'll check out the foundation, his massive live rig. From there, we'll dive into the details of his vintage studio gear, break down the contraptions on his pedal board, and finally, we'll get to the philosophy behind it all, his search for air.
Okay, so first up, the blueprint. We keep talking about this signature sound, this dasu, but what does that actually mean when you plug in a guitar? Well, you can pretty much boil it down to those two words right there, fatness and guts. His sound is all about power and weight. It really only has one job, to be this huge, solid foundation for the raw rock and roll energy of the birthday. We're not talking about a million different flashy, complex tones here. Nope, this is about a simple, overwhelming force that just fills up the room.
And that brings us right back to dosu. This concept, this idea of a gut-punching impact. It's like his North Star for every piece of gear he picks up. It's exactly why he prizes his 1959 Jazzmaster over all his other guitars. He says it simply has more of that physical, tangible heft to its sound than anything else he owns. You can just feel it. Okay, so you've got this core idea of desu, this gut-punching sound, but how do you actually make that happen on a stage, night after night, consistently? Well, this is where Fujii's incredible, almost engineering-like mind really comes into play. See, instead of using one super complicated amp that does everything, he thinks more like a painter with two different brushes. He has one amp that's always on, and that's for laying down the big, broad, foundational color of his tone. Then he's got a totally different amp that he uses like a fine-tipped brush, just to add those bright, cutting highlights whenever he needs to pop out for a solo. And here's exactly how it works. His 76 Marshall is his bass, and it is always on. But check out the settings. The volume is way down at 1, just enough to get that warm tube saturation, and the presence is at 0 to kill any of that harsh fizz. Then when it's solo time, he kicks on the Music Man. Its job is simple. With the middle knob cranked up to 8, it just shoves his guitar forward so it slices right through everything else. It's such a brilliant, simple solution.
But the second he walks into a recording studio, that whole carefully controlled live rig, it pretty much gets thrown out the window. It's not about being stable and consistent anymore. Now, it's about opening up this massive palette of vintage sonic colors. His whole philosophy shifts to what he calls a song-first approach. So instead of just having one go-to setup, he listens to the track he's working on and asks, okay, what emotion does this song need? Then he'll dig through his collection to find the exact vintage guitar that has the voice for the job. And I mean, you can just see how versatile this approach makes him. For the heavy album opener, he's grabbing a 72 Les Paul Custom specifically for that dirty, powerful neck pickup. Then for another song, he'll switch to a vintage Gretsch. He even brought in a 12-string guitar for the first time in the band's entire history just to get the perfect shimmering texture for one specific song. It's all about what the music demands.
Okay, the next layer of his sound comes from his pedal board. And you might be thinking it's some giant spaceship, but it's not like that at all. For him, it's about having the right tools and often with some incredibly clever and practical modifications. Okay, you have got to see this. This is one of the coolest pro tips ever. His main solo boost is just a standard BD2 blues driver, but look at this hack. First, he sets the tone knob way down to kill any of those harsh metallic frequencies. Then, and this is the genius part, he fits a little rubber tire from a model car onto the gain knob. Why? So he can roll the gain up and down with the side of his foot while he's playing a solo. This gives him this amazing, expressive, dynamic control over his distortion. It's just pure genius. And the rest of his board follows that same mindset. It's a curated toolkit where every pedal has a very specific job. You've got the legendary Boss CE1 for a specific shimmer on one song, the Maxon 8900 for that classic subtle analog delay, and then he's got this one, a digital delay that he uses as a secret weapon to create those wild, chaotic, oscillating sounds you hear on songs like Red Eye.
So that brings us to the final, and I think the most important part of his entire sound, the philosophy that's driving all of these choices.
I mean, why go to all this trouble? Hunting down vintage guitars, running 2 amps, putting model car tires on your pedals. What is Kenji Fujii actually searching for?
The answer is it's not about technical perfection. Not at all. He is famously sensitive to harsh high-end frequencies, and he's always trying to get rid of what he calls metallic sounds. What he's really chasing is a tone that is warm, immersive, and feels like it has its own life force, like it's breathing right alongside the band.
And this quote just reveals everything. His lifelong quest isn't just for guts or power. It's to capture this intangible feeling he calls air. You know that sound when you're in the back room of a guitar shop and you play the perfect guitar through the perfect amp and the whole room just comes alive? That's what he's talking about. His entire elaborate setup is just a machine that he built to try and bottle that magic feeling and put it on a record.
So that really makes you think, right? It doesn't matter if you're a musician, an artist, or whatever. What is that perfect, intangible feeling? What is the air that you're chasing in your own work?